Well, to talk more about Hillary Clinton's visit to Israel, we're joined in the studio by author and journalist Rachel Shabi. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. So just under 2 years since Hillary Clinton was last in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Why now? Because nothing new seems to have come out of any of the news conferences.
She hasn't said anything new. I think it's more to do with domestic pressures in the US ahead of the presidential elections. The Obama administration has been under some pressure from the Republicans for not being supportive enough of Israel, incredibly, given that the reason that the already sort of zombied peace talks between the Israelis and Palestinians torpedoed in the first place was because the American administration was so supportive of Israel, or rather a rightist agenda on Israel. But in that context, I think Hillary Clinton is in the region to shore up support, to shake the right hands and to make the right noises about support for Israel.
Well, some of those noises, I mean, she mentioned that the instability could also be seen as an opportunity. Is she there also to show support to the Israelis at a time when, let's face it, most of their neighbors are in turmoil?
Well, again, it just seems like a very tired old script, especially in the face of all the uprisings in the region and the geopolitical shifts that are likely to ensue. I mean, you would think that sensible advice from the US administration to Israel might be something like, look, that peace treaty that you've got with Egypt is actually a really good treaty, and you might at some point in the future need to think about renegotiating that so that it includes some sort of just solution to the Palestinian issue, because apart from all the other benefits to that, that will also guarantee continued treaty. But instead of that, Clinton basically just said, oh, the Egyptians, you know, they're busy, they've got their own internal problems to worry about, which is true, but does seem to be a little bit short-sighted as well.
The US-sponsored peace talks stalled in 2010. Doesn't seem like anything is going to start again until at least there would be a new US administration. So really, how has this visit been perceived in Israel itself by the Israeli press?
Well, I think if I was, you know, part of the Israeli coalition government, Netanyahu's government, I'd be absolutely delighted with that trip because, you know, given that since the failure of those peace talks in 2010, things have only grown worse. I mean, Israel has continued its settlement expansion in the West Bank. There have been continued and increasing numbers of Palestinians being evicted from their homes in East Jerusalem, something like 1,100 in the past year alone. And the Israeli right wing is starting to talk about the settlement project having